In an interview, Dr. Aranda explains that a supermoon happens when a full moon is closest to Earth. This can happen several times a year, but last year was special. During that supermoon, 1 billion people suddenly turned into werewolves for the whole night. No one knows why this happened, but since another supermoon is coming tonight, Dr. Aranda advises everyone to stay inside and avoid being outside. He also says that scientists are working hard to find a cure for those already affected. Meanwhile, Wesley is taking care of his sister-in-law Lucy and niece Emma after his brother's death, using his experience as a former soldier. Wesley spends the whole day setting up traps to protect his house from werewolves. He places bear traps in the garden, connects pepper spray and electric wires to the fence, installs security cameras around the property, and covers the roof with barbed wire. While working, Wesley sees his neighbor Cody practicing shooting and warns him because there are kids playing outside. However, Cody ignores him, saying he's training because werewolves have already started attacking Japan and Australia. Meanwhile, another neighbor, Reagan, brings some cookies to lift Emma's spirits since it's the anniversary of her father's death. To thank her, Lucy gives Reagan some extra batteries and pepper spray. After Reagan leaves, Wesley tells everyone that the house must stay locked for the rest of the day and goes over the rules with Lucy again. They can't open the door for anyone, make any noise, draw attention, or hesitate to shoot. Since Wesley works for the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, he's on duty tonight and apologizes to Emma and Lucy for having to leave. After Wesley leaves, Lucy locks all the doors and windows. Meanwhile, downtown, the military has taken control of the streets. A curfew is about to begin, and buses are picking up homeless people to take them to shelters. Wesley remains cautious, suspecting anyone who seems off and feeling uneasy about the negative signs around. Once Wesley arrives at the CDC facility, Aranda introduces him to the press as the leader of the Global Rapid Response Team and lead molecular biologist. Evan is the second in command, while Amy is the chief canis lupus biologist and behavior specialist. Aranda explains that the supermoon causes rapid DNA mutation and that it's photosensitive to moonlight. Tonight, the CDC hopes to find a way to block the DNA mutation, and so far, they've developed a liquid called Moonscreen that should act as a barrier between the moonlight and DNA. If successful, it could potentially be developed into a cure. Afterward, everyone enters the facility and all the exit points are sealed. Amy watches as her boyfriend, Miles, arrives. He was one of the people who transformed into a werewolf last year. She remembers their last kiss and how he assured her that volunteering for the experiment was his decision. Miles is placed inside a cage and chained up as a precaution, since werewolves can sense when a supermoon is approaching. Wesley, Evan, and the other scientists wear special suits, equipped with digital screens on their visors, which display the vitals of the test subjects. The scientists administer moonscreen drops to the volunteers' eyes and spray their entire bodies with the liquid. One of the test subjects begins to have second thoughts, feeling scared, but her concerns are brushed aside. Miles tries to comfort her, while the last two volunteers grow increasingly excited and out of control. The ceiling is open to let the moonlight in, but none of the test subjects transform, indicating that the moon screen is working. Aranda quickly orders the team to collect samples to begin developing a cure. Wesley and Aranda analyze the samples and discover that the mutation appears to be some sort of immunological defense system. They conclude that the supermoon is triggering a dormant defense response, but they can't figure out why it only became active last year. Suddenly, Miles begins to transform, revealing that the effects of the moon screen only last for 60 minutes. Evan attempts to activate the machine again to spray Miles, but Miles reaches through the bars and grabs it, causing Evan to freeze in fear. At that moment, the other test subjects begin to transform as well. Amy urgently orders her assistants to close the ceiling, but Miles pushes the spraying machine, causing it to crash into a cage and several pieces of equipment. This triggers a short circuit that disrupts the power, preventing the ceiling from fully closing. The test subjects continue to transform into horrifying creatures, while several machines explode, spreading chaos and further damage throughout the facility. As most of the scientists flee, one of the explosions damages Aranda's suit, exposing his body to the moonlight, causing his DNA to begin reacting. Wesley holds Aranda down while Evan scrambles to find a tranquilizer, but he's too slow. Aranda fully transforms and his newly formed muscular body rips through the protective suit, slashing Evan with his claws. In a panic, a scientist opens fire on Aranda, but the bullets miss and strike nearby cages, causing even more of the werewolves to break free. As Wesley rushes Evan into another room to tend to his bleeding wounds, the unleashed werewolves begin attacking, killing armed scientists in their path. The situation spirals further out of control as the chaos unfolds. Amid the thick smoke from the explosion and the power failure, the room is plunged into darkness, making it nearly impossible to see. One by one, The remaining scientists are dragged away by the werewolves in the shadows. In a violent display, one werewolf picks up an armed man and throws him at a window, shattering it and creating an escape route. In the corridors, the remaining staff desperately tries to evacuate, but the werewolves soon catch up, continuing their brutal rampage. Amy, startled by a falling body, eventually reunites with Wesley and Evan. As they struggle to open the infirmary door for safety, another body falls nearby, and a menacing werewolf approaches them, closing in fast. Just in time, they manage to unlock the door and rush into the infirmary, narrowly escaping as a soldier opens fire and finally kills the advancing werewolf. Inside, Wesley and Amy try to tend to Evan's wound, but it's too late. He's lost too much blood and dies. Amy is devastated and insists on going after Miles, but Wesley stops her, reminding her that her boyfriend is now a dangerous monster and there's nothing they can do. When Amy suggests they stay in the infirmary and wait for help, Wesley reveals the grim reality. The rest of the staff has already evacuated, and it's only a matter of time before one of the werewolves breaks through the door. In the neighborhood, howling echoes through the streets as the lights flicker and power starts to malfunction. Reagan, unable to find her mother, hears strange noises but doesn't realize there's a werewolf lurking in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Lucy checks the security cameras and spots another beast running down the street. The werewolf climbs a tree in the garden, and Cody opens fire from his window. However, all his shots miss and the creature moves closer to the house, eventually breaking the window and letting the moonlight flood in. As the moonlight touches Cody, his DNA begins to react, and he starts transforming into a werewolf himself. In the facility, Amy and Wesley quietly move through the hallways, trying to avoid the rampaging werewolves. They manage to reach the armory, where they suit up in protective gear and gather as many weapons as they can carry. After applying moonscreen to their eyes and spraying any exposed skin, they set their watches for 60 minutes. Wesley makes Amy promise that if either of them transforms, the other will shoot them without hesitation. As they make their way out, they encounter Miles, and Amy shoots a light bulb to create a distraction with the sparks, allowing them to escape. They rush to Wesley's car and drive off as fast as they can. While on the road, Wesley calls Lucy, who shares what she's seen on the security cameras, giving them more information about what's happening outside. As Lucy is on the phone with Wesley, Reagan appears outside, pleading for help, telling Lucy that a werewolf killed her mother and asking to be let in. Lucy wants to open the door, but Wesley reminds her of the danger. While they argue, a werewolf, which turns out to be Cody, attacks Reagan and quickly kills her. Distracted by the phone call, Wesley crashes the car into a bus. The call ends, and Lucy, hearing Reagan's screams as she is murdered, starts to panic. Cody, in his werewolf form, pushes against the fence, triggering the electric trap, intensifying the danger. Lucy, seeing Cody on the cameras, quickly activates the pepper spray to keep him at a distance. Meanwhile, in the car, Amy and Wesley crawl out just before the flames can reach them. Wesley realizes he dropped his phone, but there's no time to retrieve it. Amy drags him away to safety. With no choice but to continue on foot, they move cautiously, making sure to stay hidden as they spot several werewolves destroying cars. They try to advance by moving behind parked vehicles, but more werewolves suddenly appear at the other end of the street, trapping them. The duo is now surrounded by the beasts. To stay safe, Amy and Wesley hide under a car, doing their best to remain quiet while the werewolves continue destroying everything around them. One of the beasts even sniffs their car, but thankfully, it doesn't find them. After a tense moment, the werewolves eventually leave the street. When Amy and Wesley come out from under the car, the alarm on their watches goes off, reminding them it's time to reapply the moonscreen. The werewolves hear the alarm and immediately begin chasing them. The duo sprints to a nearby mall where the gates are just about to close. They make it in time, sliding under the gate just before it shuts, leaving the enraged werewolves outside. A kid in the mall leads Amy and Wesley through the area, and as they follow him, they notice several people locked behind different store gates. Wesley realizes they've entered a market with underground tunnels, which could be their way to safely cross the city. However, just as they start to feel a bit of hope, a blade is suddenly pressed against Amy's neck, and a group of masked people appears, threatening to attack. In a desperate plea, Wesley explains that they only want to reach his family. After a tense moment, the mysterious group agrees to guide them to the tunnel entrance. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lucy is monitoring the cameras again and discovers that Cody has been howling, likely summoning even more werewolves to join the attack. After crossing the tunnel, Amy and Wesley are almost at the exit when a werewolf suddenly appears behind them. They try to open fire, but the creature knocks them down and starts throwing Wesley around. As he hits the ground, Wesley grabs a metal pipe and uses it to stab the werewolf. The creature spits blood on him before collapsing dead. With the threat dealt with, They continue toward the exit, but first they need to reapply the moon screen. Unfortunately, the moon screen has become too hot to be effective, leaving them vulnerable. Spotting an open store nearby, they cover themselves with a tarp and rush inside, hoping to find safety. In the store, as they break down the door, the alarm sounds, prompting Amy to quickly disable it to avoid alerting the werewolves. Wesley places the moon screen in the fridge and they wait for it to cool down. Minutes later, Wesley hears a strange noise and investigates, finding a child who is also transformed and is now eating a cat. Hesitant to shoot the child, Wesley is relieved when Amy uses a teaser to knock the creature unconscious. Meanwhile, back in town, the werewolves manage to destroy half of the cameras in Lucy's house. They begin pushing against the fence to trigger the electric trap, causing the house lights to flicker and malfunction. Hearing the noises, Lucy prepares a weapon before checking the remaining cameras. The werewolves manage to push down a tree that crashes onto the fence, taking out the power lines and plunging the entire house into darkness. However, Wesley had left plenty of flashlights for the family, so Lucy and Emma rush around the house to turn on as many as they can. The werewolves, now inside the property, cross the fence, and one of them gets its leg caught in a bear trap. As the werewolves begin climbing onto the roof, Lucy quickly moves from room to room, shooting at the ceiling in an attempt to stop the beasts from advancing further into the house. It seems to be working for Lucy, but eventually, she runs out of bullets and has to pause to reload, putting herself at risk. Meanwhile, Amy and Wesley return to the street after applying the cooled moon screen. They encounter a group of well-equipped people who are efficiently taking down the werewolves in the area. The group works together, using heavy weaponry and teamwork to fend off the beasts. Once the immediate threat is neutralized, Amy and Wesley try to ask the group for help. However, the others don't believe that the duo is protected by some mysterious liquid, and a heated argument breaks out. Suddenly, a werewolf reappears, killing one of the men, prompting his teammates to open fire in response. Wesley and Amy take cover behind a car, watching in horror as another warrior is captured by a werewolf and has his face eaten. A stray bullet shatters the car window, leaving Amy dazed for a few minutes. Wesley quickly steps up to protect her, shooting at an incoming werewolf. Meanwhile, a massive werewolf leaps off a roof. A man in a truck immediately opens fire, but the werewolf uses a human body as a shield before throwing it to knock the man out of the truck. The man is dragged under the vehicle and eaten. Amy realizes the wolves are forming a kill circle around them, so they need to leave before they're trapped. Determined to test a theory, she volunteers to act as a distraction. Amy steps out from her hiding place, yelling to draw the werewolf's attention. The large werewolf smells her and punches her in the stomach, but doesn't kill her. She screams at the beast, and it roars back, giving Wesley the opportunity to climb onto a truck and open fire. After a barrage of bullets, he successfully takes down the massive werewolf, and the remaining werewolves retreat in fear. Wesley jumps into the driver's seat and calls for Amy to join him. But as she approaches, a hairy hand reaches out and pulls her away. Wesley watches helplessly as she disappears from his sight, realizing he doesn't have the time to save her. Feeling overwhelmed with guilt, he drives off, leaving Amy behind. Lucy keeps shooting at the werewolves through the ceiling, instructing Emma to stay hidden. When a werewolf moves above the living room, Lucy fires again, creating a large hole in the ceiling, letting moonlight pour in. The wolf shifts toward the front door and starts shaking it, prompting Lucy to shoot at it, creating more holes, but she soon runs out of bullets. In a panic, Lucy grabs a knife for herself and the bear deterrent spray for Emma. Just then, a werewolf breaks through the wood covering a window and enters the house. Lucy and Emma quickly run to hide in the bedroom, trying to stay out of the creature's reach. The werewolf is about to find Lucy and Emma, but it's distracted by a noise outside. Wesley is honking the truck's horn, drawing the attention of the 4 werewolves blocking the street. He speeds up and starts running over the wolves one by one, crushing them under the truck. The last werewolf jumps onto the truck to try to stop him, but Wesley crashes it straight into Cody's garage, forcing the creature to fall off. In the bedroom, Lucy and Emma believe they're safe, but before they can leave, another werewolf bursts through the wall. The two of them run in panic, and Lucy pushes Emma into a closet to protect her, hiding behind a door with her knife ready to defend them both. As the first werewolf finds Emma, it breaks the wooden door, but she quickly activates the spray, successfully scaring it off. Meanwhile, a second werewolf enters the other room, and Lucy waits for the perfect moment to strike. However, the wolf overpowers her and throws her onto the dresser. Emma appears from behind and stabs the wolf with the fallen knife. Lucy seizes the opportunity, grabs an axe, and uses it to kill the beast. Seconds later, Wesley bursts into the house, relieved to find his family safe. He reassures them, but quickly tells them to hide when they hear the wolf from the garage approaching. The family huddles together, bracing for whatever comes next. With only 15 minutes left before sunrise and no bullets, Wesley knows he has to take a desperate measure. He says a heartfelt goodbye to his family, handing Lucy his watch with a 15-minute alarm to help track the time. Stepping outside, he's met by the formidable sight of Cody in werewolf form, awaiting him. Cody stares up at the moon, and Wesley knows it's the final moment of transformation. Cody sacrifices his humanity, a powerful sign of his willingness to protect his loved ones at all costs. The two werewolves face off in a brutal battle. Despite being in wolf form, Wesley's military training takes over, giving him the upper hand. His strength, skill, and experience allow him to easily overpower Cody. In a few swift moves, Wesley uses his claws to decapitate the enemy, ending the fight and securing a moment of peace just as the dawn approaches. Lucy watches in horror as Wesley, now fully in werewolf form. Terrified, she hides Emma in the cupboard, trying to protect her. In the midst of the chaos, Lucy finds a bullet on the floor and grabs her weapon, hoping to stop Wesley from further violence. Desperate, she pleads with him to remember his family, to no avail. When that fails, she shows him a picture of his brother, but Wesley roars in defiance, knocking her down. Facing the inevitable, Lucy prepares to shoot him. The alarm on Wesley's watch goes off. Realizing it's the final countdown, Lucy recalls Wesley's last words to her, and instead shoots at the window, letting the sunlight flood in. The sunlight touches Wesley, and in an instant he reverts to his human form, the transformation reversing as the curse is broken. The battle for his humanity ends with a bittersweet victory, and Wesley, now himself again, collapses in relief and exhaustion.